All right, so in this video, I want to explain the tax return. I want to make sure that you finally understand your tax return. So to do so, I'm going to use a tax software here called Profile. So I'm just using it for presentation purposes. It might not be the easiest thing for presentation purposes. Don't get overwhelmed. Take it one information at a time and maybe repeat the video if you have to. It will be valuable. So I'm going to start off by looking at the bigger picture and then going in details, but obviously not in all details, but just in the most common details, the information that you really need to know. All right, so the first thing, obviously, you have your total income. So your income in Canada, as long as you're a Canadian resident, your income, whether it's worldwide or in Canada, your income gets taxed, and it goes through there's certain rules for how your income is taxed. So first thing, you've got your total income. And then you've got elements that will reduce your total income, giving you a net income. So between total income and net income, you've got elements that will reduce it and bring it to net income. Some of these common elements is your RSP deduction. So obviously you've heard of RSP deduction. If you make an RSP deduction, it's going to reduce your total income and bring down your net income. Then once you have your net income, there are other elements that will reduce your net income to your taxable income. And then once you have your taxable income, this is what goes through this tax bracket. And as you can see, it's progressive. So regardless of what your taxable income is, it'll go through this calculation. So you can see here for 2022, the first $50,000 of taxable income. So it's not necessarily your salary or working income. It's your taxable income, which is a calculation that comes from all the lines above here. Now, of course, not all these lines will concern everyone, but the most common line here is the RSP, of course. So the RSP is going to come reduce your total income, therefore it's going to make your taxable income lower. So instead of, if let's say you make 100K, you've got an RSP of 20K, so you're not going to be taxed on 100K, your taxable income is going to be 80K. And that's what's going to fall in your tax bracket here. So let's do an example here. So you can see in the first line of total income, I'm moving fast here. So the first line of employment income is your box 14 of all your T4 slips. So if you have a T4, box 14 is your employment income. And it's going to be the first line here of your T1. The T1 is basically your tax return that gets submitted to CRA. So let's just go fill out a tax return here, a T4, sorry. Whatever, I'm just going to use Quebec here. I'm going to put, let's say, $100,000 of income. And I'm just going to go give myself a province here of residence. Obviously, every province has its own tax rules. So I've given myself a 100K income. So as you can see, my total income now is 100K. Uh, my net income is 100K, and my taxable income is 100K. I'm going to get taxed at 100,000. But remember, the first 50,000 is taxed at 15%. You could see the rate here, 15%. Now, anything between 50,000 and 103.92 gets taxed at 20.5%. So that's what's important. You should not refuse extra money just because you think you're going to fall in a higher bracket. It's not the whole salary that falls, or not. It's not your whole income that falls in the extra bracket. It's just the additional income that falls in the extra bracket. So either you get no additional income or you get additional income taxed at a higher bracket. What's better? It's better to get that additional income, even if it's taxed at a higher bracket. Either you get 0% of additional income or you get 50% of additional income. It's better to get 50% of additional income. So yeah, and in this case, in this example, the extra 50,000, anything above 50,000 but below 100,000, 392 gets taxed at 20.5%. And then you've got the other bracket, anything above 100 and anything between 100 and 155 gets taxed at 26%. Now this is for 2022, and these brackets get adjusted every year with inflation. So the first 15%, the first 50,000, sorry, will generate a tax owing of 7,529. So because I've made 100, because my taxable income is 100,000, I owe 7,529 from the first bracket and 10,209 from the second bracket. So I owe a total of 17,000, and that's just on the federal side. That's just CRA. So my $100,000 of taxable income generated generated a taxable owing of 17,700. So that's my taxes owing. But come to that, there's a section of non-refundable credits, and then there's a section of refundable credits, and then the difference is what I actually have to pay, or maybe I'll get a refund. So in general, how taxes work is if your employer deducted enough taxes throughout the year, then you won't have to pay anything. If they didn't deduct enough throughout the year, you have to pay a balance. If they deducted too much, you'll get a refund. So that's how it works. So some people they wonder how come I didn't get a tax refund. Well, it depends. And I made less last year or I made more this year. I paid more taxes. It depends how much was deducted throughout the year. If too much was deducted compared to your situation, compared to your taxable income, then you'll get a refund. If not enough was deducted compared to your situation, then you're gonna owe a balance. You're gonna owe money. So in this scenario, so as you can see, the T4, I only put 100K, but I left box 22 empty. Box 22 is basically the tax deducted throughout the year. When you get your paycheck every 2 weeks, there are taxes deducted, and that's represented in box 22 on your T4. So in this example, I put zero. So I didn't it's as if I'm saying I didn't pay any taxes throughout the year, but I'm actually supposed to pay. I owe CRA federally. I owe 17,700, but I've got non-refundable tax credit, and the first non-refundable tax element is the basic exemption that everyone gets, which is 14,000 in 2022 is 14,398. So basically, the first 14,398 gives you a 15% credit. So the non-refundable credits is a credit of 15%. So basically, as you can see, remember the first bracket here, the first 50,000 is taxed at 15%. But you've got a non-refundable credit here of 15% of a basic exemption of 14,000. So basically, the first 14,000 of income, if you make 14,000 of income, you're not going to pay taxes on it. So you've got a credit here of non-refundable credit here of 14,000, which is the basic exemption or basic personal amount. Sorry. And then what else do you have here? You've got a bunch of elements here, but we'll go through the elements after. For this example, I just want to show you a basic example. So you've got 1287 here, which is Canada employment amount. So if you have employment, you get this non-refundable tax credit of 1287. So 1287 plus 156 plus 14398 gives you a total of 15685. That multiplied by the 15% rate for non-refundable credits gives me 2352. So what am I going to do with this 2352? I'm going to go remove it from my tax owing of 17,739. So that's what non-refundable credits do. They reduce your taxes owing. But they only have a value, non-refundable tax credits, they only have a value if you have taxes owing, because you can only use it to lower your taxes owing. But if you have zero taxes owing, then you've just wasted your non-refundables. They're not going to do anything for you. So this is for students who have tuition. Tuition falls under non-refundable credits. Here, I'll show you where it is here. Tuition, I believe, is at the bottom here. Tuition. So your tuition, education, and textbook amounts, complete schedule 11. So this line here is a non-refundable tax credit. Like I said, non-refundables only go against taxes owing. So if you didn't pay any taxes, that means you didn't have any income that given year. Your tuition is not going to do anything for you. But luckily, tuition can be carried forward. So even if you have tuition, you can claim it or record it in your tax return and then use it in the future when you do have income. So when you do have income, then your tuition is going to make a difference. It's going to give you federally, it's going to give you a 15% credit, which will then be applied against your taxes. So for example, if someone had, I don't know, let's say $50,000 of accumulated tuition, remember right now this person owes 17,000 of taxes based on their taxable income, right? Their taxable income, we put it in the bracket here in this calculation, and it comes out of the bracket with owing 17,000. They've got non-refundable, everyone gets 14,398, and this person was working, so 1287. So they get a credit of 2352. So it reduces their 17,700 owing. So they're left with basic federal tax of 15,386. But let's say we give them tuition. Let's say we give them tuition of $50,000, right? Let's say they had accumulated tuition for several years of $50,000. So now the credit, their non-refundable credits is now 15% of 65,000. Where does this 65,000 come from? It is the 14,000 basic exemption, 1287 Canada employment amount, and the $50,000 of tuition. So 15% of 65,000 is 9852. So remember, our taxes owing calculated was 17,000, but we now have 9682 of non-refundable credits, 9852. So I'm going to reduce it. So I'm going to reduce the 17,000 by 9852. As you can see here, I'm left with $7,886 of federal tax that I owe. So if I continue down the tax return, the T1, as you can see, because I chose Quebec residents, there's an extra calculation here, refundable Quebec abatement. This is a special calculation, won't be with every province. So you've got a refundable credit here, or deduction to the taxes owing of 1,300, because Quebec is going to come charge you way more taxes. So now this reduces the 7,886. So 7,886 minus 1,301, I'm left with 6,585. Now that's the balance owing federally. So that's how much I have to pay. So you can see how I went from 17,000 of taxes owing. So I went from $17,000 of taxes owing to 6,585. Why? What basically reduced my taxes owing is my non-refundable tax credits. What were my non-refundable tax credits? The personal amount that everyone gets, 14,398, which increases every year. The 1287 credit Canada employment amount because I was working, and my tuition of $50,000. So that generated a non-refundable tax credit of 9855, which reduced my taxes owing of 17,000, bringing it down to 7886, and then come here, remove 1301 Quebec abatement. I'm left with 6585. Now, this is an example where I didn't pay any taxes during the year. If I go back to my T4, which everyone gets at the end of at the beginning of the following year, in reality, everyone's going to have taxes that was deducted throughout the year from their salary. So let's say you had, I don't know, on 100,000, let's say $30,000 was deducted. Well, yeah, let's just say $30,000 was deducted from your pay throughout the year gradually. So you actually income tax deducted, you actually paid $30,000 throughout the year. So that's going to go change the calculation. So remember, let's start back here. My taxable income is still 100,000. I still owe 17,000 based on my taxable income. I still have my basic exemption of 14,398 plus my 1287 plus my 50,000 of tuition, giving me, after the 15% credit, it gives me, I get to reduce my 17,000 of taxable owing um, by 9,800. Okay, so I'm left with 7,886. But this is how much I have to pay based on my income. This is how much I have to pay based on my income. But guess what? I already paid $30,000 throughout the year. So this line here, total income tax deducted. I already paid 30,000. But based on my income, I only have to pay 7,886 based on my situation, my income plus my tuition, or my income plus my non-refundable tax credits, which tuition is included in non-refundable tax credits. I'm only supposed to pay 7,886. I already paid throughout the year 30,000. So that's where you get an income tax refund. I paid too much throughout the year. I paid more than I should have, so I'm going to get a refund. So basically, I'm going to get 30 minus 7,886 minus the 1301. So that leaves me with 23,414. So in this made up scenario, I would get a refund of $23,000 federally. Why? Because I already paid 30,000 of taxes throughout the year gradually. I didn't feel it because it was taken out of my paycheck, but based on my calculation, based on my income, based on my non-refundable tax credits, which included a big amount of tuition, $50,000, I was only supposed to pay 7,886. I already paid 30, so government's going to refund me the difference. So 30 minus what I'm supposed to be paying, so I'm left with 23,400. That's my refund. So if, on the other hand, I didn't pay any taxes, zero income taxes deducted, so I'm updating my T4 here, box 22. I paid zero taxes throughout the year. My employer, for some reason, didn't deduct any paycheck, or whatever the reason. I had several small jobs with low income, so not enough taxes were deducted. So let's say only $5,000 was deducted. This is just a hypothetical scenario. Let's say $5,000 of taxes were deducted throughout the year on my paycheck. So if I go back to my T1, I'm supposed to pay 7,886, but I only paid 5,000. So there's a difference that I owe. I owe 2,886, but that 2,886, I'm going to remove the Quebec abatement, which is a refundable credit, and I'm left with 1,585. So that's what I'm going to end up paying after doing my tax return, because not enough taxes were deducted on my paycheck throughout the year, or I didn't pay enough taxes throughout the year. So this is a basic scenario. Someone with only employment income. I didn't even put RSPs yet, but as you can see, employment income is the first line part of the total income calculation. Brings my total income is over here 100,000. My net income is the same because I didn't make any RSP contributions, so my net income is the same. My taxable income is as well the same. My taxable income gets calculated based on this tax bracket and tells me how much taxes I'm supposed to be paying on my income. And I've got my non-refundable tax credits that will only reduce my taxes owing. So I have to have taxes owing for my non-refundable tax credits to make a difference, because they're only here. They only exist to reduce my taxes owing. In this case, because of my personal amount, because of my employment amount, and because of my tuition, I had a non-refundable tax credit of 9,852. So I reduced my 17,700 of taxes owing by 9,852. I am left with 7,886. That's what I'm supposed to pay. That's what I owe based on my situation. I already paid 5,000 though throughout the year based on which is box 22 of my T4. So now I'm only supposed to pay 6,301. Sorry, so 7,886 minus the 5,000 that I already paid. I already paid 5,000, but 7,886 is what I'm supposed to pay based on my situation. I'm left with 2,886 minus the 1,301 of Quebec abatement. So that means I'm left with 1,585 that I'm gonna end up paying. After completing my tax return, that's what I'm gonna end up paying.